So this is the Pilot 78G. This is the first fountain pen that I ever bought back in 2015 after trying the Pilot Varsity V pen, and I gotta say, even though that this pen has its problems and it's not the highest quality pen, I do see myself making this my everyday carry pen quite often. I absolutely love the Pilot medium nib that it has on it, and I also love this pen's ergonomics. The only issue is this pen was discontinued back in 2014, around about then, a bit before I bought this pen, and the issue is if you want to buy a new one of these pens, you're going to be paying at least $30. I've seen them on eBay for even more, and $30 for a low quality pen, I don't think it's worth it. Now there is a successor for it, the Pilot 78G Plus, though I can't find anything on Pilot's website about the 78G Plus, which makes me think that it's probably just a knockoff pen and someone's just selling it as a Pilot. I'm not too sure. Another issue is the 78G Plus is also around about $25. So I was really happy when Wingsung launched this. This is the Wingsung 3001 and it is a clone of the Pilot 78G. So how would I summarize this pen? Well, to put it plainly, this is like a Pilot 78G where every little bit is a little bit worse. It's not so much a Pilot 78G Plus like the successor is, it's more like a Pilot 78G minus. And this is a really good knockoff, honestly. It's a little bit worse, but it is a good knockoff. So if you get a bad knockoff, it might be a Pilot 78G minus minus, because it's doubly bad, two minuses, but it makes it a plus. Anyway, I don't want to talk about maths. Let's get into the specs of the pen. So capped, it's 13.6 centimeters long. Uncapped, it's 12.2 centimeters long. And posted, it's 15.2 centimeters long. Weight, I'm not sure about the weight. It's definitely below 16 grams. It's certainly lighter than this pen here. The Pilot 78G was never a heavy pen, and this pen is certainly a little bit lighter than it. Not much lighter, but it's definitely noticeable. In terms of build quality, you can feel instantly that it's also not the highest quality build. The Pilot 78G, again, is not the highest quality built pen, though you can certainly feel that it is a lot cheaper. They do say this body is made out of ABS. They do market that pretty well on the Alibaba website, though ABS, it's alright. A lot of pens are made out of ABS, and honestly, this pen has held up pretty well. I've been using it for a little bit over a month, and it's picked up some scratches. They're very light scratches, though because it is black, it does tend to mask it pretty well. Same there for the Pilot 78G. It picks up quite a lot of micro scratches, but because it is black, it will mask it. In terms of deep scratches, it's fared pretty well. One issue that I do have with this pen is the clip. The clip works fine. The only issue is there is this sort of thread screw to put on the clip, and that screws down. The whole thing comes apart pretty easily, and that screws down to keep the clip on. Now the only issue is it's not designed very well, because the first little bit of pressure you put on and it snaps off, and the whole clip is free to move. Let me tighten it up again, and a little bit of pressure and it snaps right off. It doesn't break, but the threads just aren't keeping this clip on. So honestly, I'm just disregarding using this clip at all. Honestly, you put the cap on and then you want to open it. Doesn't work one bit. Absolutely useless. Now if we take a look at the threads of the pen, I do like the threads of the pen because they are down the bottom and they're pretty thick. I don't think anything's going to break it. I've been using the 78G for a long time and I think it's pretty sturdy. You get this free standard international converter. I do like it because it's clear, holds about a week, more than a week's worth of ink, and that's pretty good. In terms of it being plastic threads, you can eye drop this, and I haven't eye dropped this one yet, but I have in the past eye dropped the 78G, and that works out pretty fine. You get over a month's worth of ink, and it's really good. Right, let's talk about the nib, and the nib in the past is where I've been praising Wingsung pens. So this pen comes with a 0.38 extra fine nib, and it's really comparable to the Pilot fine nib, and it's actually really similar because it's styled to look like a Pilot fine nib, the nibs that you get on the Metropolitan, and I gotta say, my opinion on those nibs is not very high. I'm not the biggest fan of Pilot fine nibs, I just don't think they write too well. I'm much more of a fan of the Pilot medium nib, and when you compare this nib to the Pilot medium nib, there is absolutely no competition. Pilot medium nib I will choose every time, I love that nib. But in terms of this nib is pretty good when you compare it to the nib that I got on my original Pilot 78G. I think it is just as good. It's scratchy, as was the Pilot nib, but after a while the scratchiness does tend to wear down. You break the nib in and it writes a lot wetter and a lot better. In terms of it being wet, even though it is wetter than what it was, I used to get a lot of hard starts with this pen. Now it doesn't hard start at all. The only thing is you might want to make sure that the feed is 100% saturated, so you get the feed of the pen, the converter, one turn, that's all it needs. Saturate the feed and the pen will write for ages. In terms of line variation, you don't get much line variation with these nibs, and you don't get much line variation with Chinese nibs anyway. You can push down, and there is a little bit, but it's a stiff nib. You wouldn't want to be pushing down too hard if you were doing regular writing. Honestly, my entire thoughts of this nib is it's very similar to the Pilot nib, and I didn't like the Pilot nib all that much. But if you do like the Pilot fine nib, this nib should be fine for you. But if they offered a medium nib, I would certainly take that over this nib. Alright then, welcome to the writing sample for the Wingsung 3001. This is the 0.38 extra fine nib, and it's very similar, as I said before, to the Pilot fine. The ink that I'm using is wonderful Diamine Ancient Copper. Absolutely wonderful ink, sent in by my friend Bill. Absolutely wonderful. So, as I said, Ancient Copper. Not an everyday ink, I don't think, but when I'm doing calligraphy and stuff, this is just absolutely wonderful. Let's get into a writing sample. And as you can see, that was just a wonderful writing sample. The nib was a little bit scratchy, though it is a lot better than it was when I got it out of the box. It's improved quite a lot. As you can see, there is little to no line variation. There is a little bit of variation in the colour of the ink due to the shading, and I really do love this ink. Nice shading. I think that's just down to just natural shading. Pressing down will deliver a little bit more ink rather than actually the tines spreading, but let's just have a look at actual line variation, because honestly, normal writing, you're not going to get anything, but this is it with no pressure, and if we purposefully add pressure, you can actually get proper line variation. So if you want to slow down, if you really want to slow down, you can pick up some line variation, though I don't think it's worth it. But if you just try, there is certainly some, there is certainly a difference between the thin line contrasting with the thick line. In terms of wetness, I have saturated the feed because I've just filled it up, but it's not the wettest feed. It is imitating a Pilot feed, and it's not particularly wet, though it does tend to keep up with the fine nib. In terms of reverse writing, Yeah, you can do it. It's not that scratchy, but it is very dry. In terms of natural line variation, pretty much nothing at all. The nib's ground pretty much to a round ball. Now let's compare it to a proper pilot nib. So this is the Wingsung extra fine nib, extra fine, no pressure there and a lot of pressure. So let's compare it to the medium nib that I have on my Pilot 78G. I think this is using Montblanc Diamine Earl Grey. Lovely ink that I've just started using. So this is the Pilot nib. Medium. And I absolutely love this nib. No feedback whatsoever. Here it's not scratchy at all, but it writes so nicely. And it's a little bit wetter just because the nib is a little bit bigger. Absolutely love this nib here. But let's compare it to the Pilot Fine nib, because as I said before, it's very comparable to it, and I have it here on my Pilot Prera. This is the Pilot Fine. As you can probably hear, there's a little bit of feedback. And this is using, I think this is just Noodler's Black. And as you can see here, the fine is very comparable. If anything, this fine, the Pilot Fine, is a little bit thinner, but not that much thinner. It is a little bit nicer to use, but it was on a much more expensive pen. Honestly, I don't see that much difference. This has a very nice extra fine nib, though it doesn't spread out that much. So all in all, I'm not the biggest fan of the Pilot Fine nib, and this pen here has a pretty comparable nib. Thank you so much for watching.